So I guess we're ready to kick off.
Yep.
Hello, one more time. So it is the next series of our podcasts, Silk Road Revival. So we bring that highly academic knowledge to the masses. So today's guest is Todd Pugatch. He's an associate professor. Just a minute. He's an associate professor of economics at the University at Buffalo. His works span the fields of development economics, labor economics, and economics of education. He also studies how to make education work better, both in US colleges and low and middle income countries, using randomized experiments and careful data analysis to see what actually helps students learn and succeed. So today, all of us are here. So I will explain the agenda briefly. So in the first part, we will ask you some personal and work-related questions to get to know you better. In the second part, we will focus on one of your research works, which is entrepreneurship education and teacher training in Rwanda. And in the third part, we will focus on your other work, also regarding the economics of education, that is improving school management in low and middle income countries, a systematic review. So one more time, very nice to meet you, Professor Pugatch. Very glad that you have time to contribute to our project.
Thanks. I appreciate the invitation. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
Sure. So I guess we may start with the part one. So the question we usually ask our guests is, what first drew you to the field of economics, and was there maybe some open eyes moment when you understood that that economics is what you want to do in your life?
Sure. My interest in economics came from a confluence of factors. I took my first economics course in high school, and around the same time, late in my high school career, I was becoming increasingly aware of the disparities in income and wealth between communities in my home state of Massachusetts in the United States. I lived in a pretty affluent community, but one that had a mix of income levels, and we were right next door to the poorest city in the state. And traveling around my local community, I began to question, okay, well, why are some communities richer than others? Why are some households richer than others? And of course, that's one of the oldest questions in economics, going back to Adam Smith. In the meantime, this first course in economics I took really grabbed my attention. I thought it was a fascinating way to view the world and human behavior, and unlock a lot of the insights about how resources are allocated and how decisions are made. So in terms of kind of that moment, it was around that time of my life. That said, I still wanted to explore other ideas and disciplines. I went to college with kind of 80% sure that I was going to major in economics, and that plan turned out, and kind of at each successive stage, I always came back to economics until completing my graduate studies. So my early interest in income and wealth disparities, and that process of development eventually led to my interest in international development, and in particular in education, as one of the key drivers in determining the opportunities and wealth of households and countries.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. Pretty insightful.
Thank you for your answer. So my next question would be, so you did research on the fields of labor economics, development economics, economics of education. So my question is, how do you see all these fields of economics intersect with each other in general and in your works specifically as well?
So the economics of education is often considered a subset of labor economics. So labor economics is concerned with how workers and firms meet in the labor market, and what outcomes workers have. And of course, one of the main explanatory factors in why we see differences in wages and occupations and life course of different workers is the education and training they receive. So that kind of, that sort of question always interested me, and it led naturally into economics of education, and trying to explain how people make decisions about how much education to get, what type of education to get, and what their outcomes are eventually, as well as how to make the process of education more productive for students. My interest in labor economics led naturally to those questions. I was also, interested in how all these processes played out in low and middle income countries, where the potential returns for education are the highest. Given the lower levels of skills and lower levels of opportunities that many people in low and middle income countries face. So that's my perspective on how they fit together, as well as my own interest. That education is a way to realize one's potential and transform one's environment, and kind of when we aggregate that up to the scale of a community or a country, it can really have a transformative impact.
Got it. Thank you so much.
So my next question would be about balance. So how do you balance the demands of producing research works with the equally big responsibility of teaching students? And what is more important for you, teaching the already known or exploring the unknown?
Yeah, good questions. I'm not sure that I've quite found that balance, despite being at a relatively advanced stage of my career. Ideally, they're complementary. Teaching and research are complementary rather than substitutes for each other. I've been fortunate in my career that the courses I've been assigned, do overlap with my research interests. And when they don't, I try to kind of steer them in that direction. Not only out of self-interest that it's more fun, but I think it's also better for the students. If I'm teaching something that I'm passionate and knowledgeable about, the students should gain a lot more from it than if I'm kind of out of my area. So that's how I try to balance them, is have them overlap to the extent possible. Introducing ideas and lines of research inquiry that aren't necessarily my own per se. I try not to inject myself too much into the courses I teach, but nonetheless areas that I'm passionate about, so I can convey that passion to my students. As far as what's more important, teaching the known or kind of new areas, like you said, I think there's a balance to be struck. Students need to master the basics and understand the foundations. There's this famous notion that research and knowledge is about standing on the shoulders of giants. Well, we have to understand where the giants have been before we can climb up on their shoulders. So it's important to master those basics, and also it's something as a teacher I often get a lot out of. Even though nominally I know the basics, I know what's in the textbook. The process of turning it into a course and a lesson plan, to convey that knowledge to students, often yields new insights to me that I hadn't previously thought about, even though I may have learned the material years or decades ago. From there, having kind of gotten a firm grounding in the basics, I think then it's the time to incorporate new knowledge, new areas of inquiry. Particularly as students get more mature in their academic careers, challenging them in new ways, and bringing them along with my own journey of discovery to the extent I can.
Got it.
Thanks.
So here is the follow-up question that I got in my mind right now. So, how to protect time for deep work while teaching and doing field research? Do you follow any certain routine or using certain apps?
Yeah, again, I don't know that I've mastered this part of the job either, or every time I think I've mastered how to carve out time for deep work, some new potential distraction intrudes, or I give in to the temptations to not engage in that deep work. So some things I've found that are useful, really it amounts to kind of blocking off time and focus to the extent possible. So I've learned over the years that I'm more alert and productive in the morning, so I try to leave mornings free from scheduling meetings and other obligations to the extent I can. Not coincidentally, I know it's late there in Uzbekistan. I appreciate you staying up for this interview. It's afternoon for me. Today I actually couldn't have met in the morning anyway because I had teaching. So sometimes you can't schedule the deep work exactly when you want. But I wake up before my kids and my dog are up, so I can get some work in when I'm fresh and before the other responsibilities of the day take over. Everybody's circumstance is different. Your own rhythms, like whether you're more productive at night or during the day or in the morning, will vary. Your own circumstances for when and how you can carve out this time will vary depending on your other obligations. But kind of trying to, within those constraints, trying to find the times that work best for you is what I've found to be most effective. And yeah, so kind of scanning. I live by my electronic calendar, in terms of apps, and scanning that and trying not to introduce too many distractions and reserve time for deep work is how I try to do things.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And by the way, it's not a problem by us to stay up late. I guess it's
okay. Yeah,
don't worry about it.
Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate your flexibility. Are you university students?
Yes, I'm a university student.
Yes, I'm a high schooler.
Okay, all right. Well, great. It's great that you have this interest, and yeah, my own time patterns have changed. I was much more prone to be up late working and studying when I was a student than I am now. So it shifts over time, or at least it did for me.
Sure thing. So we will move to another question. So you have worked in places as different as Rwanda, the Gambia, India, Malawi, and in the US. So how do you choose where to run a study, and what must be true before you say yes to a new project? So how do you choose it?
Yeah, I wish I could say there was some grand, deliberate plan behind all of these choices, but it's been more kind of being opportunistic as things come along. So, a lot of my dissertation work when I was a graduate student was on South Africa. Why South Africa? Well, it's a fascinating country, and aligns with my interest in low and middle income countries, but kind of more importantly, it was where my dissertation advisors were working and collecting data. So, they had some great data and a lot of expertise. So it just kind of naturally made sense to follow in their footsteps with what they were doing. Similar explanations can be given to the other places you mentioned, the other work I've done, where the Gambia, my work in the Gambia started from the World Bank inviting me to do a consulting project on education policy there, and that kind of got me down the road of learning more about that country and their education system. Through that work, I met a collaborator, Musa Blimpo at University of Toronto, and he was approached by an NGO to evaluate a program of theirs, a teacher training program in Rwanda, and that's what I expect we'll talk about later in this conversation. And he invited me to collaborate with him on that work. Yeah, that was a great opportunity. So I said yes. And that's kind of how all of these things have happened. An opportunity comes along from an organization or a collaborator, and it aligns with my interests, and I have the bandwidth to take it on, and I say yes. The work I've done on U.S. higher education, a little bit different. Some of it fits that mold, but it also a lot of it stemmed from my own experiences as an economics instructor and wanting to understand better, how my students were choosing whether to major in economics or something else, how we could increase the demographic diversity in the economics major how we could improve outcomes for students. And so that led to a series of experiments on those issues. So that was a little bit more independent than, kind of just taking opportunities as they came to me. But another U.S. higher education project on the evaluating the effectiveness of an honors program at my university at the time. That came from a conversation I had. I was carpooling with a colleague who was an associate dean in the honors college, and she was always hearing me complain about what I considered to be bad research methods in other fields outside economics. And she said, okay, if you're so smart, then why don't you use your superior research methods to answer my research question, which is how effective is our honors college at this university? So I accepted that challenge, and that led to a project. So yeah, I kind of these targets of opportunity arise, and I take them whenever they line up with my interests and availability. And I guess you asked, how do I choose also, among these things? I guess it comes down to that combination of, is this an area that aligns with my interests, something that I can be passionate enough about that I can see it through to the end. Research can be tedious and often demoralizing when things don't work out well. And so if you're not really interested in the question and knowing the answer to the question, you'll be pretty miserable. So I always make sure first and foremost that I'm genuinely interested and passionate about the question at hand. Fortunately, as researchers, a lot of things fit that category because we're curious about the world, or at least our area of inquiry. So within that set, then it's kind of a matter of, all right, well, how does this fit in with my existing research agenda and my other responsibilities? Can I realistically take it on? And how likely is it to succeed? And if the answers to those questions line up pretty favorably, then I tend to say yes.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So you mentioned that you did a consulting project at the World Bank, right? Designing
Yes.
the education policy for right. So could you please elaborate on that, and how was your daily life look like um, as a designer, policy design economist there?
Sure. So to clarify, I was not and am not a policy designer.
Oh,
The World Bank engaged me as a consultant to evaluate an existing policy of the Gambian government, known as the teacher hardship allowance. So for some time, the Gambian government had been giving a bonus, what they called a hardship allowance, to teachers who were willing to go to remotely located schools. As a way to increase the quantity and quality of teachers in those schools, hard to staff rural areas essentially. And so, the World Bank wanted an evaluation of this policy, and they invited me as a consultant to do that work, and that led to a pair of papers on that policy with my Oregon State University colleague, Liz Schroeder. So I didn't design that policy. It was, the government's initiative came in long before I ever was involved, and my role was to objectively evaluate how well it was working.
mm-hmm. Got it, got it. Thank you.
So many of our listeners are interested in the fields of economics of education and labor economics. So, what first projects or initiatives should a student or a young researcher try in their own school or city to learn the craft more, to kind of immerse him or herself into the field fully and understand it from experience?
You mean in their local area?
Yes, it may be local area. Yes, it can be online as well. Like
Okay.
any initiative that you find interesting and really worth it.
Yeah. I would say, start from your own experiences. If you're interested in the economics of education and you're currently a student, then you've got, a great vantage point to think through questions and potential answers to them just by observing and reflecting critically on what you're seeing around you in your own experiences, and kind of have it grow from there. So if you notice a particular pattern in your own education or that of your peers, or in your school, try to dig a little bit deeper. Look more into the local situation through local media, but then also try to see if there have been if there has been systematic research on the question or a similar question. You're unlikely to find something that's specific to your local area or even your country necessarily, but if you kind of tweak your search appropriately to expand the geographic region or the scope of the inquiry, you're likely to find something relevant, and that will lead to something else, and kind of you'll be off and running, trying to triangulate between what's known globally about this issue or this question with what you're observing locally, and that can spur a lot of really innovative and insightful questions for how to pursue these topics using your own experience, which is often the most powerful guide to developing new research questions.
We'll definitely look into that. Yes, thank you.
Mm. Thank you. So my last question for the first part would be about the advice. So what kind of advice would you give to your younger self who were just entering the field of economics? And what would you advise yourself, and why? Maybe what core skills to learn, or anything else?
Sure. So kind of I'm trying to put myself in my shoes or your shoes, kind of at the stage that both of you are, university and high school, how I might have improved on things given an existing interest in economics. When you choose course, to the extent you have a choice of courses, which I know not all people do in all settings, but if you are able to choose courses or sections of courses, I usually chose based on the topic of the course, which was a decent guide for course choice. I got to study topics that interested me. If I could do it all over again, I would have put more weight on the skill and reputation of the instructor of the courses. A really good and passionate teacher can make a subject you may not know you're interested in come alive and spark your interest. And there's all these different subfields of economics. Hopefully you're able to take courses in a range of areas. And again, if you have the choice, I'd highly recommend asking other students, particularly older students who have gone through the courses, what they thought of the instructors, and trying to choose at least partly based on that. I think I missed out on some good opportunities by not giving enough weight to the instructor quality back then. Topically, I wish I had learned statistics and econometrics a little bit earlier. I came to that near the end of my undergraduate career. I didn't know, I guess at the time I was considering graduate school in economics, but I didn't fully know what it took in terms of the mathematical preparation. Math courses and statistics courses and econometrics courses. As you may or may not know, the field is intensely mathematical at the graduate level. So if you're serious about studying economics at the graduate level, at least in a U.S. or European institution, you have to have a very strong quantitative background. So in a traditional economics major at a U.S. university, you're not necessarily exposed to that unless you kind of go out of your way to seek it. So had I known more about that, I would have changed the mix of courses to be more mathematically grounded and quantitative earlier on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Another element of it that kind of I am glad I did, that fortunately I don't have to worry about having to do over, is if you are considering a career in research, considering a PhD, which is a research-oriented training program, get some experience with it as early as you can in whatever way you can. Research is, as I said before, it can be tedious, it can be demoralizing, and it can be especially so if you're encountering it for the first time, kind of later in your life, when you're closer to making it your career. So having that experience in a more lower stakes setting, like as an undergraduate, can really help you to know whether it's something you genuinely enjoy. So for me, that was doing an undergraduate thesis in economics. If you have the opportunity to do that or to work as a research assistant, if you're considering a research career, there's no substitute for that direct experience.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I guess we'll be moving to the part two. So sorry for that. I didn't turn on my microphone, so sorry. So we'll be moving to the part two. We will discuss the work, entrepreneurship, education, and teacher training in Rwanda. So first, I will briefly explain the context of work and its results, and then we will move to the questions. Rwanda rewrote its high school entrepreneurship course to be more hands-on. The researchers tested whether intensive teacher training, 2 years, like supplemental 2 years to the standard government training, like of workshops, peer observations, and coachings, would make the reform work better. So, in a large randomized trial across about 207 schools, the training changed classroom practice. There was more group as a result, and more skill labs, and it also nudged students' choices. So more tried small businesses, and fewer took wage jobs, 5% to be more precise. But test scores did not rise, and in follow-ups, the entrepreneurship boost persisted after 1 year, yet largely faded by about 3 years. So with no overall earning gains. The main takeaway here is that teacher training can shift how classes run and what students try, but turning that into lasting learning and income is much harder. So I hope I did it okay. Honestly.
Yeah, that was a perfect summary. I think we're done. We don't need to. You don't need to ask me any questions because you got the whole thing.
No. Like honestly, I have prepared questions.
No, of course, happy to answer questions.
Yeah, thanks. So my first one would be, what's the origin of this project? Like, why Rwanda and why entrepreneurship?
Sure. So like many low and middle income countries, opportunities for formal sector employment, opportunities for wage and salaried employment are scarce in Rwanda. So in Rwanda, about 3 out of every 4 young people who are employed are either self-employed or they're employed in a family firm. So here in a high-income country like the U.S., when you usually get your first job, it's working for someone else for a paycheck. Often for a fairly large company. That's a rare outcome in a country like Rwanda. So for most young people, when they leave school, more and more are making it past primary school into secondary school, but often stopping either midway through or at the end of secondary school. For most of them, when they leave school, the reality is they've essentially got to create their own job. There's not a job waiting for them on the other side of things. So that makes it incredibly important that when they leave school, they've got some skills to manage that transition successfully. Rwanda, to its credit, has recognized this reality for some time. They introduced entrepreneurship as a required secondary school subject in 2009. So every high school student in Rwanda has to take entrepreneurship since 2009. An anthropologist who wrote a book about this process called it the most intensive youth entrepreneurship promotion program in the world. So, that's the good news, that Rwanda kind of recognizes the need for entrepreneurship skills to improve outcomes for people when they enter the economy for the first time. Their first efforts at this entrepreneurship curriculum weren't particularly successful. So, the traditional model of education in Rwanda, as in many sub-Saharan African countries, is that the teacher is going to give you a collection of facts. You're going to remember all those facts, and you are going to repeat those facts when examined on them. That might work well for something like chemistry or physics. It's not a great approach for entrepreneurship, where you need to be creative and adaptive and innovative if you want to succeed. It's not just about mastering a body of knowledge, right? So again, to the country's credit, they reformed the required entrepreneurship course in 2016. And that's where this program that you mentioned that we studied came in, where they reformed the curriculum for everybody to make it more student-centered, more interactive, more focused on practical skills that they wanted students to have when they left school so they could be successful entrepreneurs. But it's very difficult to just kind of snap your fingers and reform the approach in such a dramatic way. It's very difficult for teachers who had been teaching in the traditional way, who themselves were students in the traditional way, to just change how they teach. So this teacher training program that you mentioned came into play. It was a collaboration between the Rwandan government and an international NGO called Educate, and it was an intensive 2-year teacher training program to try to better equip the teachers to deliver this more interactive, skills-focused entrepreneurship curriculum. It was so that was the origin of the project, trying to take this reformed, more interactive entrepreneurial course in high school, which everybody was required to do, and equip at least some of the teachers, the ones that they could accommodate in this first round of training, with better training, better skills on how to deliver that curriculum, in hopes of leading to better outcomes among the students when they left secondary school.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Yeah, so that was the origin.
All right. So my next question would be that more students tried to come up with new ideas and open up new small businesses, while fewer took wage jobs. But still, the average earnings didn't rise. Why is that?
Yeah, so it goes back to that trade-off that you just identified. So we found a modest amount, about 5 percentage points, more students ended up in the entrepreneurial sector when they were exposed to this program, or teachers who had been exposed to this intensive training program. But because this is a very highly economically active population, right? Not that many students go on to university. When they leave secondary school, many of them are just going right into the economy. In fact, many of them were already economically active while they were students, but even more so, when they leave school. So the ones who weren't going into the entrepreneurial sector were making ends meet somehow, getting jobs somehow, right? And so the quality of the businesses that were being started under the program didn't outweigh the earnings potential in whatever the next best alternative was. And so overall, you saw income unchanged in these early years of the evaluation.
Thanks. So my next question would be that entrepreneurship bump faded after a few years. So what do you think happened over time, and what was the reason for such a decline? And one more question here. So you only observed those students for a period of 1 year and 3 years. So if you could observe them for a longer time, do you think your results would change? Let's say a decade or so.
So we found, as you said, the control group, the group whose teachers weren't exposed to the entrepreneurship curriculum training program, caught up in terms of their entrepreneurship rates by the time the students were 3 years out of high school. Why did that happen? So the timing of this is really important. The program ended, or at least this first cohort that we're studying, ended in 2018. That's when, at least if they were on time, students finished high school. 3 years later is 2021. What's going on in 2021? A global pandemic, right? And so being an entrepreneur is a difficult sector to be in 2021 in Rwanda and many other places of the world. The types of entrepreneurial jobs, the types of small businesses that students at that age and skill level can start don't lend themselves very well to remote work. You've got to kind of be out there selling goods or services in direct contact with your customers. That's a difficult place to be in 2021, right? And so overall, entrepreneurship rates fell in both the treatment and the control group, but it was, they evened out between the two groups, right? So that's a big explanation, part of the explanation, we think. Another part of the explanation is that the students who were induced into the entrepreneurship sector by the program, these are the ones who weren't likely to have been entrepreneurs if not for the program. So their attachment to this path was a little more tenuous. They were less likely to be on that path, but they were encouraged to do so by the program. That's great. That was, part of the idea, but it also probably made their attachment to the entrepreneurial path a little weaker. And so, when times got hard, they were more likely to seek alternatives out of necessity. Oh, and sorry, the other part of your question was what would happen if we observed them for longer? I would love to know. Right, so again, the last round of data that we have was 2021. I would love to know what happened since then. I would love to know what's happening with them now. Unfortunately, another downside of the pandemic and this data collection in 2021 was that we were only able to follow up with half of the original sample. We lost the other half. We're pretty confident that the results we're getting are valid, even though we lost so many of the sample, because we don't observe major differences between the treatment and control group. Even when we only have about half the sample, we do a whole bunch of statistical adjustments, and our results go through. So I'm pretty confident in the validity of our results. But given that we already lost half the sample in 2021, if we were to follow up with them in subsequent years, we'd end up with even fewer in all likelihood. And so the confidence we would have in the data and in the results will just go down from there. Not to mention, it's hard to convince people to fund such a project, given the high attrition rate. So for that reason, I don't have an answer, but I would love to know what's happened to them since.
Thanks. So my last question would be quite general, I would say. So when is intensive teacher training in entrepreneurship worth it? So, and when should systems prioritize it over other levers, such as like basic skills, soft skills, let's say, and in order to move the long run earnings, specifically earnings?
Yeah. It's an excellent question. In our case, I don't think the somewhat disappointing results were due to failures of the teacher training or the quality of the teacher training per se. Another thing I should mention that hasn't come up yet is we found some somewhat disappointing results, and that the entrepreneurship rate of the control group had caught up by the end of the period of data that we have. Income was unchanged. And in fact, in the 3-year follow-up, we find some suggestive evidence that for some, income might even be lower. One important additional result we haven't mentioned yet, though, is that the treatment group, the students whose teachers were exposed to the training program, were more likely to be enrolled in university after 3 years. So in the long run, they might have even better outcomes. We just hadn't yet seen it in our final round of data collection, right? So that means, kind of bottom line, this kind of program could be worth it in the long run if it yields those returns. But again, I don't think it was a problem of the quality of the teacher training per se. If I could pinpoint, if I were forced to pinpoint one area where why the program had disappointing economic results in the medium term for which we have data, it would be that because this is a required program, all high school students have to take entrepreneurship. That is going to affect the outcomes in a very powerful way. There are other studies on entrepreneurship education programs in similar settings. I have another paper also on Rwandan secondary school students in a fully online entrepreneurship training program. There's a paper from neighboring Uganda of a program for recent high school graduates that mixed hard skills and soft skills, and was a 4-year follow-up, and it was run by the same NGO that designed the teacher training program in Rwanda. In both of those studies, there were high economic returns to the participants. In my mind, the biggest difference between these other programs that were much more successful than the one we evaluated is that they weren't required. The students who took those other entrepreneurship education programs were choosing to be there. And then the study was randomizing some to get access to the program and randomizing others to sit out, right? To not get access to the program or to get access at a later time, right? So that was the control group. What they had in common was they all wanted to be entrepreneurs. So they all were already thinking about, okay, how can I be successful in this line of economic activity? And they were given the tools to do so. In our case, we have this required entrepreneurship course. Yes, some teachers get this more intensive training. We find the teachers did, by and large, what they were supposed to do. They showed up for the trainings, even though it was intensive, and there were no formal incentives for it. They changed how they taught to a large extent. They made the classroom experience of the students significantly different from the control group teachers. What we didn't see was a robust increase in skills among the students and ultimately better economic outcomes among the students, at least in the data that we have, right? The medium term data that we have. And again, if I had to pin it on one thing, it's that, everybody had to do this regardless of whether they wanted to be an entrepreneur or anything else. If you were a high school student in Rwanda, you had to take the course. And so that's a very different underlying population than a group that says, yes, sign me up for your entrepreneurship course.
Thanks a lot, Professor Pugatch. That's all by me. So we'll move to the part 3 with abroad.
Yes, thank you so much. I got really interesting insights. But I'd like to talk about your different paper, which is Improving School Management in Low and Middle Income Countries, a Systematic Review. So I'd also like to briefly introduce the paper to our audience, just talk about the main idea, and then we'll get back to the questions. Okay. So this paper basically asks a simple question. If we train and support school leaders, like principals, head teachers, and other teachers, in low and middle income countries, do students learn more? So Professor Pugatch and other researchers show that principals in low and middle income countries often have less decision-making authority than those in richer countries. And there is a lower female representation among principals, which is very important context for what management reforms can realistically do. Yes, that's basically it. So,
Yeah.
so again, my question is that many low and middle income countries, principals have limited formal power over hiring or budgeting, right? But they can still shape routines, for example, goals, feedbacks, and other factors. So, given these constraints, which routines can principals control that most reliably translate into better classrooms?
Yeah, thanks for that. Was a good summary of the paper and a good question to lead off. One of the findings that we have in the paper is that school principals in low and income countries have very limited autonomy, very limited decision-making power. In most cases, they're not in control of who their teachers are. They can't hire the teachers they want, promote the best teachers, fire the worst teachers. Those kind of decisions are largely out of their hand. They don't control curriculum content in most cases. So it would seem that their hands are largely tied in terms of changing school outcomes. Nonetheless, I think there's a lot of scope for school leaders, even in these highly constrained environments, to shape how teachers teach and how students experience their academic careers. So, the one of the recommended practices among practitioners who focus on school leadership is for a school leader, a principal, to just be as present as they can in the classroom. Regularly visiting and observing classrooms, not just popping your head in to say hi, but actually, sitting in the classroom for an extended period of time, observing what the teacher is doing. Yes, they're teaching the required curriculum, you're having control over that, but how they teach it, how they convey knowledge, how they support students, particularly those who are struggling, the teacher has a lot of discretion over that, right? And in turn, the school leader, the principal, can influence how their core of teachers approach those issues. So by observing and then meeting with the teacher afterward and giving feedback, right, and doing that for the whole school, you can kind of set a strong example and give clear guidelines for how you want teachers to be teaching, even within this otherwise highly constrained environment. So that's one example. Now, it's difficult to pin down the effectiveness of some of these programs on one specific practice like that because lots of other things are changing at once. But that's just one example of how a school principal can be a potentially powerful force within a school, even though they don't have formal decision-making power over lots of aspects of the school.
Got it, yeah. Thank you so much. And my second question would be that, so we know that leadership rarely works alone. Pairing it with the right partner can reform and may unlock bigger gains. So if you could just add one companion change, for example, that such as teacher coaching, simpler assessment, or some small school grants, which would you pick to turn better management into better learning? And why would you do that?
Oh, that's a good one. So if I had to pick one thing, I think it would be stronger support from administrative levels above the school. So often schools are, embedded in, schools are always embedded in, larger administrative structures. Often it's, the district level or something equivalent to that in a particular country. And, then a Ministry of Education at the national level. Those higher levels, just like I was talking about how the principal can set the tone for the teachers in their school, those higher levels can also set the tone and lay down the priorities for school principals and other personnel at the school level, right? So having support to focus on better learning outcomes, better skill acquisition from that next administrative level, which yields a lot of power and influence, I'd say that would be the most powerful partner that a school principal could have.
Yeah, got it. Um, so, my next question would be that what's the one research question you wish more teams would tackle next? For example, multi-year persistence, principles, pipelines, incentive design, or something else. And what would you what would the gold standard study of that question look like, of the question that you would want to other people to continue to study?
Yeah. So you're talking about within the context of school management,
Yep.
within the, yeah. Um, so I wish we knew more about accountability mechanisms for school principals. A lot of the programs that we found that we included in the systematic review were based on trying to increase the capacity of school principals, a series of workshops or coaching sessions to give them better skills that they could take into the classroom. So, if we think kind of, the basic tools in the incentive toolkit, there's carrots and sticks, right? Carrots are kind of incentives to do something better, and then sticks are the accountability mechanisms for, when you don't do things so well. There's a lot of carrots in the school management practice and the evaluations that we found. Less in terms of accountability. What happens if a school leader doesn't follow through on some of these recommended practices? Just as it can be difficult to change the composition of the teacher workforce based on performance, that also seems to be true for school principals. So the next research I'd love to see is a program that tries to change the accountability mechanisms for school principals and see how that affects practices at the school and student learning outcomes.
Yeah, that's
I'm fond of the. Oh, go ahead.
very interesting. Yeah. No, please.
In terms of what would the study look like? I'm fond of randomized control trials as the gold standard of evidence. So I'd love to see a school system or a country where you've got a large number of schools that are under the government's remit, and you randomly assign some to get a stronger form of accountability, and others to just have the status quo, and then trace out the outcomes over a period of a few years.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Got really interesting insights. Yes, that's basically it by me. So far, do we have any more questions?
So yeah, I had a couple, to be honest. So you said, like, in the first part of the podcast, you said like it's good to start with writing some research at a really young age. So I really wanted to, like, I'm majoring in behavioral economics, and I wanted to have some experimental research, experimental based research. So, and like the only resource I have basically is Google Forms. Like, I can't manage a big study in real life, etc. So most of the people are online nowadays. So Google Forms is a good resource. So what would you recommend overall about, like, conducting an experimental study first, and second, how would you like suggest to form, like, to structure those Google Forms to work best? Like, I never done nothing similar before, so any piece of advice would help. Honestly, if you need some further details, I can provide.
No, it's great that you're already thinking about these things. It's such an early stage, but certainly it's challenging, right? You lack the resources and the experience, but you're already kind of thinking in the right terms. Google Forms can be really powerful, right? I mean, it automates your data collection. You can send out a link, and if you get people to respond to it, there your data is in spreadsheet form, and you can start to manipulate it the way that you want. So that can be a powerful start. So I could imagine some kind of survey that tests a mechanism in behavioral economics in an experimental framework, right, where you randomly vary how a set of choices are presented to potential respondents, and you send out 2 or 3 types of Google Forms with the different versions to respondents, and see how they respond, and then start analyzing the data. might be able to do this among classmates or schoolmates, other groups of people that you might be able to send this link to and ask them to fill out your survey.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. So yeah, overall, what do you think about the podcast? Like what you liked, what you disliked. We're open to criticism fully.
Oh, I appreciate that. I think this is fantastic that you've taken the initiative to put this together. I saw on your page you've already interviewed a number of economists. I'm honored to be one of them. And I hope you've heard the feedback from others, but I'll share it that it's just great to see this kind of enthusiasm and initiative, particularly from people halfway around the world. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. You came very prepared today, and you also helped me prepare to know what to expect. Flattered that you read my papers, and yeah, clearly you thought about them. So yeah, just keep up the great work.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so
So
much.
one more time, dear Professor Pugatch, we do appreciate your contribution and your enthusiasm. Thanks a lot for your time.
My pleasure.
So that's basically it. We hope to keep in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know where to find me. So
Sure.
yeah, best of luck with the podcast and everything else.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Have a great night. Get some rest. I know it's late there.
Sure,
All right,
sure.
take care.
Bye.